The love between you is true, but the reason for the separation goes beyond what you can imagine. This is not just about feelings, it's about something you need to know now. Don't ignore what can change everything. Find out before it's too late. You are here because you feel that something is wrong, aren't you? It's not just the silence, nor the fights, or the unfinished conversations. There's something more, something that cannot be ignored. This separation, even though it seems inevitable, does not need to be the end. It has a reason that you have not fully understood yet, and perhaps that's exactly what is missing for you to see the truth. Have you ever wondered why the love seems so strong, but the circumstances insist on keeping you apart? It's not a matter of feeling or lack of will. It's something deeper, something that needs to be confronted now. Because if you do not take action, this reason will continue imposing itself between you, like a barrier that grows over time. Think about it. Why are you still here seeking answers? It's not because you have given up. It's because you know there is something still worth fighting for. Something that goes beyond words, that transcends the day-to-day difficulties. What you have is rare, and allowing it to be lost because of a reason you do not fully understand would be a mistake. A mistake you know you cannot make. But to move forward, you need to understand. You need to look inside to face truths that may be difficult to accept. Because as painful as it may be, it is the only way to turn this separation into something temporary, something that can be overcome. And the truth is this: sometimes love is not enough to keep two people together. It hurts, I know, but that doesn't mean it isn't powerful enough to bring you back together. It just means it needs to be more than a feeling. It needs to be a decision, a commitment to understand and overcome whatever stands in the way together. So ask yourself, what is really separating you? Is it fear, pride, unspoken expectations, or maybe something you never realized? Don't fool yourself into thinking that time will resolve everything on its own. Time only increases the distance if there is no real effort to understand and act. You need to do something now, not tomorrow, not next week, now. Pick up the phone, write that message, ask for the conversation you've been putting off. Say what you feel, but above all, listen. Listen to what is being said, and most importantly, what is not. Because sometimes what separates people is not what was said, but what's been held back, hidden, waiting for the right moment to be revealed. And if you think the love is real, as I know you believe it is, then it is worth discovering. It's worth opening up, even if it hurts, even if it's difficult. Because true love is not about perfection, it's about persistence. It's about fighting for what matters, even when it seems easier to give up. And you know what else? Maybe you'll be surprised by what you discover. Maybe the reason for the separation isn't what you think. Maybe it isn't as insurmountable as it seems. Maybe it's just waiting for a word from you, an act, to disappear like a ghost that never had that much power after all. So don't waste any more time, do what needs to be done. Because in the end you will realize that it wasn't love that lacked. It was the courage to fight for it. And that courage, only you can find. Do you know what's most cruel about a breakup? It's not the emptiness it leaves behind, but the doubts that linger. Was it really inevitable? Did you do everything you could? These questions are like open scars, and they only close when you face the truth, no matter how harsh it is. Now, I want you to reflect deeply. What was the moment when everything began to change? I'm not talking about the obvious fights or the uncomfortable silences, but that instant when you stopped understanding each other without words. That connection that once seemed invincible started to weaken, and you began to drift apart. Why? Do you think it was the circumstances? Time? Or was there something between you that neither had the courage to confront? The truth, as uncomfortable as it is that many breakups happen not due to a lack of love, but because fear, pride, and unrealistic expectations take over. It's hard to admit this, but maybe you placed barriers where you didn't need to. Maybe you expected the other to understand things you never said. And at the same time, perhaps you ignored the signs that something was wrong because it was easier to continue than to face the problem head-on. But now there is no more room to run. It's time to face what really matters. Do you still love this person? If the answer is yes, then what's stopping you from fighting for it? Maybe you're afraid of being rejected, afraid of opening wounds that seem already healed. But let me tell you something. Wounds don't heal on their own. They need care, attention, a conscious effort to heal. Maybe the reason for the separation isn't something so obvious. Maybe it's something hidden in small actions, in words said without thinking, in hurts that you kept without ever resolving. Maybe it's something external, something you allowed to interfere in the relationship. Whatever it is, you need to find out. And you need to find out now before it's too late. Have you ever heard that phrase that says, love is an act of will? It's never been truer than it is now. Loving someone isn't just feeling, it's choosing. Choosing to be present, even when it's hard. Choosing to talk, even when the words seem not to make sense. Choosing to try, even when everything seems lost. And that's exactly what you need to do now. Choose. Choose not to let the silence be louder than your words. Choose not to let pride be greater than the feeling. Choose to face the fears you've been keeping, because only then will you discover what is really separating you. And I'll be honest with you, you might discover things you didn't want to know. Maybe you'll realize that there are deeper wounds than you imagined, or that some choices from the past have made things more difficult than they should be. But you might also discover something incredible. You might discover that the reason for the separation isn't as strong as the love you still share. You might realize that what seemed impossible to overcome was, in fact, just a matter of dialogue and understanding. You are not alone in this. Even if it feels like the whole world is against you now, there's something bigger that still connects you. And if that's real, it deserves your attention, it deserves your effort. Because if you don't do anything, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering, what if? What if I had called? What if I had insisted? What if I had tried one more time? These questions will accompany you, and they will weigh you down, because deep down you know that the love between you is something rare. It's not something that happens every day, nor something that can be easily replaced. It's something worth fighting for. Now pause for a moment, take a deep breath and ask yourself, are you willing to let this end this way? Are you willing to allow pride, fear, or circumstances to outweigh what you have built together? If the answer is no, then you know what you need to do. Pick up the phone. Schedule a conversation. Say what's in your heart, but be willing to listen too. Maybe you don't have all the answers right now, and that's okay. The important thing is to be present, to show that you care, that you are willing to fight. Because sometimes all the other person needs is to know that you are still there, that you haven't given up. And if at the end of that conversation you realize that the love is still greater than any obstacle, then you will have the chance to start over. It won't be easy, I'm not going to lie to you. Rebuilding something that was broken requires patience, strength, and a lot of dedication, but it is also one of the most rewarding things you can do. And if, on the other hand, the conversation reveals that your paths really need to go in different directions, at least you will know that you did everything you could, that you left nothing unsaid, nothing undone, and that, as painful as it may be, will give you peace. What are you going to do now? This is the question you need to answer for yourself. And when you have the answer, don't hesitate. Because love doesn't wait and life doesn't stop. Do what needs to be done, and do it now. You know the moment to act is now. But acting requires courage, and courage is not always easy to find. Many times, we stay paralyzed waiting for the other person to take the first step. But let me tell you something that you might already know. Waiting only increases the distance. If you feel that the love is still there, you need to be the person to break the silence. It's normal to feel fear. Fear of being rejected. Fear of opening a conversation that might bring up things you'd prefer to forget. But you need to overcome that, because honestly, what do you have to lose? If you are already separated, the worst that can happen is that you remain that way. But what if you discover that the reason for the separation wasn't as definitive as it seemed? What if there is a chance to reverse everything? Are you going to let fear stop you from trying? Take a deep breath. Think of the person you love. Think of the moments you shared together, the plans you made, the promises you exchanged. All of that was real, wasn't it? So, why give up before doing everything in your power? Don't fool yourself into thinking that love can survive on its own. It needs to be nurtured, cared for, protected. And at this moment, that care depends on you. If you think there is still something to be said, say it. Don't get caught up in expectations of how the other person should react. Don't overthink what will happen next. Just speak. Be honest. Be vulnerable. Because true connection happens in vulnerability. Don't be afraid to expose what you feel, even if it seems difficult. Sometimes all the other person needs is to hear a word from you to find the strength to reciprocate. And remember, this is not about placing blame or pointing out faults. It's about understanding, about putting yourself in the other person's shoes and seeking answers together. Maybe you'll discover that the reason for the separation was just a misunderstanding, a lack of communication. Maybe you'll realize that the wounds can be healed, that the obstacles can be overcome. But this will only be possible if you are willing to talk, to make room for the truth. If you love each other, why let pride destroy that? Pride is an invisible barrier that seems to protect, but in reality, it only creates distance. It makes you think that being right is more important than being together, and that, my friend, is an illusion. Because in the end, what really matters is not who was right, but what you did to maintain what you had. Now think about the next few days, weeks, or months. Can you imagine your life without this person? Can you visualize the future without them by your side? If the answer is no, then you already know what you need to do, and there's no point in waiting for time to solve it for you. Time only resolves what we face. It doesn't mend broken hearts nor erase unspoken words. You are already closer to a decision than you think. The simple fact that you are reflecting on this shows that you still care. And if you care, it means there is still hope. Because true love doesn't disappear overnight. It persists, even when everything seems lost. Maybe you are wondering, what if I try and it doesn't work out? That's a possibility. But what if you try and it does work out? What if this conversation is the beginning of a reconnection that you never thought possible? You will never know unless you try. And here's another truth you need to hear. Don't expect everything to be resolved all at once. Relationships are built in layers, and rebuilding them takes time. But what matters is taking the first step, showing that you are willing, that despite all the challenges, you believe that what you have is worth it. So, what will be your next move? Will you keep waiting for things to change on their own? Or will you take the reins of the situation and act? The love between you still exists, you know that. The question is, what are you willing to do for it? Take these words as encouragement, the push you may need. Because deep down, you know the worst decision is not making one at all. Love isn't perfect, and it doesn't always follow the easiest path. But when it's real, it's worth the effort, worth the fight, worth every attempt. And in the end, even if things don't turn out the way you hope, you'll be able to say you did everything you could, that you were honest with yourself and with the person you love. And that in itself is a victory. Because there is nothing worse than living with the regret of not having tried. Do this for yourself, for the person you love, and for what you have built together. The love between you is real, and if it's real, then it deserves a chance. Don't let the reason for this separation define your story. Be bigger than that. Show that love is stronger than any obstacle. Now, the choice is yours. What will you do with this truth? You know the love between you is still real, but letting pride or fear be greater than that would be a mistake you can avoid now. Stop waiting for time to resolve everything. Do something today. Pick up the phone, start the conversation, show that you still care. Because in the end, what really matters is what you are willing to do to maintain what you've built together. Don't let doubts or regrets dominate your story. If there is still something to be saved, fight for it. And if it is not possible, at least you will know that you did everything you could. Now it's up to you. Subscribe to the channel for more reflections like this. Leave your like if this text resonated with you, and in the comments tell us what you think about the theme. When love still exists, is it worth trying again? Your participation is essential for us to continue bringing messages that touch the heart. Don't waste time. Share your opinion now.